You're about to listen to an archived episode of The Night Shift with Zeno Horoman. This is brought to you commercial-free by the Surfcast Podcast. If you're interested in more historical, educational, and entertaining surf fishing content, check out weekly episodes of the Surfcast Podcast available today on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you get your podcasts, including www.surfcastpodcast.com.
Frank, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Tommy, for having me.
All right, and we also have Tommy Corrigan, who's the co-founder of a Surfcasters Journal and a guy behind all the designs that you see in a store and a magazine. He's the coolest dude I know. Tommy, welcome aboard for this special inaugural three-way podcast.
Let's do it.
All right, so this is going to be a little bit different. We're going to try something different. Tommy and I are going to do this together, and hopefully we'll do a lot more of these. Frank is joining us tonight, which is kind of cool. Frank's a good fisherman. We've known him for, like I said, a long time. We know he does a lot of big fish, so we are curious to pick his brain a little bit. And I'm going to start by asking a question. Since you fish a lot of my rocks in certain places, what is your favorite place to fish?
Any terrain like that.
Really? You like rocks?
Any surf terrain. Yeah, I don't do well on sand. I never have. I just stare at it.
I've heard that you have to be pretty desperate to fish in the daytime.
Yeah. I hardly bother. I actually a little bit in the spring I'll go out at dusk, but pretty much night crawler only.
And you also like summer, unlike most people.
August. I'm like the exact opposite of everyone. Spring, fall. I rather hot like August night, and instead of big like swell and wind, I'll take flat calm. I'll take flat calm and 80 degrees at night anytime.
So you're not coming to Montauk to fish the Northeaster with 30 miles an hour wind?
No,
it's not happening.
I'll sit in my snowsuit.
All right. So what's so good about summer nights and a flat night? Besides sweating your balls off.
I don't mind. I don't. It doesn't need to be perfect conditions. Just summer. Like up here, we get like resident fish, and they start to be way more of a pattern. Spring and fall here, it's you get 2 days of something, and then it's like by the third day they already split. Whereas summer, July, August, some of June, and even a little bit of September up here anyway, you get resident fish. There's so much more of a pattern. So once you kind of figure them out, you can fish. You can kind of stay on those fish that whole set of tides, and then wait to the next set of tides, and they generally want to do the same thing. Every year is different though. Like you knock them out of the park one year at like one particular rock that you figured out, and then you think you never have to fish anywhere else again, and then the next season you're just waiting to do like fish that rock, and they'll never go back. Like you thought you never had to fish anywhere else, but once you do find them, it does seem to like stretch over like the whole summer, as opposed to anything you find here in spring and fall, 1 or 2 days, and they're moving on, so you kind of guess where they're going. But here, our summer fishery is my favorite. August.
Is this strictly a rock bite, meaning swimming out to the rocks or even walking to them? No,
not necessarily. If they get if they're like really chewing, they'll push in. It's if they're like really like chewing aggressive, like they'll push right in. But if they're kind of like staging, just hanging out, I don't think the water's super warm up here. We're looking at 70 plus degrees. So unless they're actively feeding, they're just going to sit out, and that's where I think like swimming helps, like get out on a rock. And once you kind of find where they are, you throw riggies to them, they're going to eat them, Whereas if you're in tight, those fish are out in 9, 10, 11 feet of water. But if they're like actively feeding, they'll be up, right in the whitewash. There just needs to be something for them to eat there, or else they're definitely not going to come in, when the water's 70 plus degrees, even at night, they'll just stage out, but you can still get them, if you just have to find them to put something on them. They're not going to be, aggressively cruising the shoreline here.
Is this strictly an eel bite or is it a plug bite?
Oh, you can get them. You can get them on plugs too. Darters especially. That like summer bite. I started like realize it was like a lot of peanuts around, but then they'd be squid eating the peanuts, and then so it'd be like strictly darters. You're almost going to buy a fish on an eel, but generally when I'm just like popping around, I'll go riggy over everything.
Is there like a bluefish situation up there, or is it kind of like the same in New York where they've disappeared? Like
only when you have perfect eels and you don't want to feed them to bluefish so they show up, or I just make 10 nice riggies, then the bluefish show up. No, they kind of like fickled out the last couple of years. I don't run into too many at night anyway. I mean, you'll like right around slack tide. If we don't have big tides here, we'll get like a bluefish bite. Like anything in between the moons that's really slow, like a 2-foot tide, almost no current. It's kind of hard to catch like larger fish then too. It seems like that around slack. As soon as slack comes, you'll pick up like cocktail bluefish, like 2.5 pounds. But we used to get like a fall fishery, absolute like gator blues. But it hasn't been that way in maybe 5-6 years. Been a while.
Yeah, I haven't. I would just ask because I know you were doing rig deals, like an edge. Like I would just think that would be a recipe for disaster right there.
I always put on a plug first before throwing like a brand new riggy, or I'll use like my last of my old riggies when I make like 8 or 9 new ones. So I'll use that, and I'm like, oh no, perfect. I'll go to a new riggy, and as soon as I switch from a plugger to a new riggy, it's like right away I get chomped. It's
now
clockwork.
Are you a rig deal purist, or do you fuck with zip ties?
Man, I sometimes I do zip ties, but I like rig and floss the best. I know like my bud used to use braid a lot, but it cuts. I think Dave Anderson once said zip ties seem to like cut the eel. I never brine them. I never do any of that. I just throw them in a Ziploc in the freezer. I use them real quick too. So I do rig and floss instead. But everyone has to be perfect. If they're not, I think you guys fish much bigger riggies than I do too. I'm like a 14-inch, like 14 to like 16-inch. I think you guys go with 9.0s and big old snakes.
That's the way I was shown. Get the most giant one you can, and
whatever you can cast, I guess.
Yeah, I'll make a couple pinners, like real short, like real small ones, and then the rest I'll go 50-pound Dacron or higher. 80's nice. Wets the Dacron a little bit because the eel kind of wants like 10 to float. You know, it's really like the hooks and like the wet Dacron, I think, inside that sink it. But I don't go zip ties, not often. If I'm making them in a pinch and it's what I have, I'll do it.
Yeah, but I also don't like the idea of what did you say, like put in a kosher salt or whatever, brining them.
I've never done that.
I find that the skin gets like all weird and like
it gets wrinkly. It turns like an old person.
You know what? My thing is like if I don't want to eat it, I don't think fish wants to eat it. Like that shit just doesn't look that good to me. It doesn't look appealing.
I think like lobstermen used to use like salted bait. You know, they'd have like salted bait so it doesn't smell as bad. But like if you kind of
I think that does eliminate the smell. Yeah, but I also like on a rig deals, like if you get them that are not like the stomachs are not full, where they're not like ready to blow, like when they're really like fed, I prefer to get skinny eels. You know, where the stomach is, because the stomach tends to explode then after a few fish. That's the difference. But I don't like them brined at all. I do the zip ties in a pinch sometimes. Sometimes we do all zip ties. Sometimes. I don't know. I got lazy in the later years, and I think zip tie just works a little quicker.
I don't like yellow or brown eels either. You know, sometimes like the top is like it's more of like it's like an olive greenish, to like yellow. Olive, I like when they're like black to white, but like belly. Well, it doesn't matter, no. But when I'm making one, I'm like, oh, that's the one. You know.
Well, I think you can just put them in a black bucket, right? And they kind of take on a color. Right?
I'm not sure. I have a live well that's black here,
right?
And sometimes they're yellow, sometimes they got that real like contrast black, like right to like a white belly. And I prefer.
And you're actually a bigger rig deal guy than live eel, right? Rig deals like a you go to.
So many times. I fished a lot of live eels when I'm not fishing plugs, but I almost prefer a riggy. I think I caught way like larger fish too on rig deals than I did live. And then when you do get a good half an hour bite, an hour bite, it's you're just dealing with live eels versus riggies just one after another. Plus I can put them down. I can slow them down. I'm not changing them out.
How desperate do you have to be to use a teaser in front of your rig deal?
I would never. I don't use teasers anymore.
You would never. Come on, dude.
I'm a stubborn person. Like if they don't want what I want to use, I'm like, I get.
Why people do that?
I never seen anyone use a teaser.
Well, that would be like a giant act of desperation, no?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It would be like being on Cuttyhunk for 3 days and you haven't got a bump.
Yeah.
And by the way, for the record, I've done that.
What, put on a teaser above a rig deal?
No, been on Cuttyhunk for 3 days and not get a bump.
Oh yeah, people like I've had so many terrible days there, and I just wish I could teleport back to home where I was catching fish before I went. I'm like, why am I here? But it looks good,
It always looked good. That place is something special. I mean, it really is. It just there's very few places that I fished that make me feel like a next cast can be that fish of a lifetime. And I'm not suggesting that any place can't be. Obviously, you wouldn't fish it otherwise. But there's just something about
it's my favorite place to take a skunk too. Like if I'm not going to catch fish, I'd rather be there not catching fish just because it's nice, you know. And like if we're gonna be in a place where I'm just gonna have a miserable like night without like catching a fish, I'd just rather it be there. It's much more therapeutic.
Do you use darters there a lot?
Yeah, a lot of darters. And I used to use a ton of needlefish. I haven't used needles much there, and same on the mainland though. Needles used to. From Habs on used to be when Habs was making needles and everyone was fishing Habs. So maybe like 3-4 years ago, don't do as well on them. Usually metal lips and darters.
Tommy's an expert of fishing darters and Cuttyhunk.
I love darters and Cuttyhunk. Oh my god,
it's the best.
I think he does it out of spite sometimes.
Nah, that's my number one. That's it.
That's usually my go-to. I don't do well on the mainland. I use bottles all the time. I never use them there.
He particularly likes it in the daytime when like there's 100 people watching him from the cliff at the Cuttyhunk Club.
I remember the first time I went there and we were into fish on darters under the club. And then the minute the rigged eels came into the scenario, the fish got 10 pounds bigger instantly.
Yeah.
Like it was...
That
was a good night, right on that jetty in front of the club, right?
Yeah, it was an eye opener.
On darters, we were getting like 18-pound fish, and we switched to eels. No, I think I switched to eel. I had like a 30-pound. I said, Tommy, switch to eel. He switched to eels. All the fish were 10 pounds bigger. You're absolutely right.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was great.
And it was the same body of fish.
Yeah. I've had it happen with live eels before, too, though. Throwing live eels, you're getting 32-inch fish, 33-inch fish, put on riggies, and then every fish is over 25 pounds. So it's definitely the same school, but those larger fish were not touching live eels. That's happened more than one occasion.
It's interesting because that was an Al Benson joke where it was, what's the difference between a live eel and a rigged eel?
Yeah, 10 pounds or 20
pounds or something like that.
Yeah, totally.
So it's something for the ages. Like it must have been in the 50s the same thing. You know what I mean? Like
if there's one thing with fishing, usually I fish so much like during the season. I fish a ton. So by the time like November comes around, I don't want to think about fishing except plug building or like building a couple rods. I'm just burnt out. But in the middle of winter, I will think about the fish, like the hit of a big fish on a riggy. It just stops and it's like they hang themselves. That like it's better than any like live eel hit or like a thump or on a plug. They just hit it so differently that the only time like right around January, February, I'll think of fishing and I'll think like that, like sudden, like that really gets me. Like I'll miss that, like in the wintertime. The hit on a riggy.
Do you retrieve them any particular way, rig deals?
Yeah, I always like anytime someone asks. I do like a roller coaster, like how you see like a roller coaster at a theme park. Like I'll reel up, kind of like let them drop down, and I just make sure it goes like perfect like that. And it's always like right before you like lift on the drop back, I seem to get them. But sometimes I'll get them, more like lifting for a second, but I'll do like sweeps. So it's like I just think of like a kind of like a roller coaster at a theme park.
Yeah, kind of like a wave almost. Yeah. I do the same thing. I lift the rod up and then I pick up my slack by following it down
without dropping it too sudden. I reel down so it doesn't drop too sudden. So I think for a lot of people just fish them too fast. I've watched buds though like kind of work on like a pencil popper.
I fish them too fast.
You do?
Oh my god, yeah.
Mike fishes them too fast. My bud Mike, he just burns them in, and I'm much more of a slow and low type.
Zeno smoked me one time on a rock. Smoked me. Like you doing the same thing. Like I would say it was exactly the way you're mentioning it, like a roller coaster type thing. Up and down like this. And I'm fishing it more like a bucktail, and he annihilated me. And we were
once in a while
6
the
inches
bucktail
apart.
way works, but like 9 times out of 10 I'll take the roller coaster.
Yeah, well, listen. I mean, certain nights you'd be surprised that stuff works. Even like I don't know. Are you a big moon guy? Is that your big deal?
I prefer. I just fish. I'll fish like inlets or deep rips, like around the full moon. But a new moon's obviously way better here, especially bigger tides in a new moon. It's hard to
and I think that goes for everywhere in general. But and that I subscribe to that darker plugs on a new moon and lighter and all that other stuff. But one of the nights I was in Montauk, I was on a rock, and I was crushing fish on a white darter, and I think it was a new moon. And I came off the rock, and a guy that was next to me is like, "What the fuck were you using?" I'm like, "White darter," and he goes, "It was Manny." And Manny goes, "Oh, I have never even packed a white darter on a new moon." You know what I'm saying? Like, you would never think about it. So you don't know. Like, no. I mean, sometimes stuff works that it works.
I go rule of thumb. I'll go with contrast. Like on a darker night, I'll use like a darker plug. As I just imagine, like, if you're like in a dark closet and something's darker, you'll see like a darker jacket. You know what I mean? Like, it'll cast more of a silhouette. There's like more contrast. But then that's just like, I'll start that as a rule of thumb. But then, you can throw, Block Island green or fluorescent green on a dark night, and then it ends up being the ticket for that night. So I start with a rule of thumb, but you never know.
Yeah, I know. When I was talking to Steve Campo, his big thing was going to the extremes and not doing little shades at a time, like a black and then a white and then something totally opposite. And so that was kind of a fascinating to listen to him. Now, you do a lot of plug building still?
Yeah. I not the last few seasons, but this season I did a ton. Yeah.
Do you enjoy fishing your plug more than I know you're a big darter guy. Nobody likes to make a darter. I assume you don't make one either, do you?
No, I made quite a few of them. Yeah.
Oh, you did? Okay, good.
Yeah.
And you fish your own?
Yeah. Usually.
Okay.
I still fish a super strike a ton though too.
Right.
Like I'm not that much of a purist.
I think I remember when I started going to Massachusetts, somebody told me, I think it was Pat Abate that used to own the, what is that? The store in Connecticut, Rivers End Bait and Tackle. He said, you cannot give away a darter east of Connecticut. That was then. This was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I think now it has changed quite a bit. I mean, Tommy can tell you when we used to go to Cuttyhunk, they were looking at it. They're like, what the hell are you going to do with that thing? And Tommy go like, let me show you. And he would go and make a cast, and the guy go like, you got to be kidding me. So, I think that has changed quite a bit. What kind of darter do you like to make? Is it a slim profile?
Yeah, super slim.
Okay.
I don't have one hanging over there. It's like a super slim darter. I make a maple and cedar. Used them for the last 4, 5, 6 years.
Because most of the guys will make whatever they can't buy, and that's usually like either gigantic darter or a fat darter or something different.
I don't fish many fat plugs.
Okay.
Like a big fat darter, I hardly fish. I fish big metal lips, but kind of with a slimmer profile too. I've also never ever fished a pikey, or I fished one, but I never actually packed one in my bag. More like testing purposes. It's just one of those plugs that too many guys build whatever seems to work, but a lot of things that work other places don't work here, vice versa. So I don't bother with a pikey, but I've caught for years without fishing pikeys. So it's just not, I feel like I don't, just one more thing to add more, make what I'm bringing like complicated,
Listen, I spend days in Cuttyhunk just throwing bucktail all day long. I mean, I didn't exactly plan on that when I was packing my bag, but that's what the fish want. That's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the next time you go, you bring a bunch of bucktails, and they don't want them. I still only go out with like two tubes of that, like so 4 tubes of plugs. That's including bucktails, and that's including a tube for riggies, and that's all I bring.
That's not a lot of plugs.
No, I don't carry like any sort of bag. When I swim, I only do belt bags, like 2 tubes. So what I fit in there is all I bring. If there's something, I might throw up like something in my bag, like my actual, like duffel bag, if in case I need it, or like I'm going to switch. But I probably only go with 8 plugs, 7.
But that kind of forces you to really, really know your plugs.
Yeah. That's the same thing with building. Like I don't build like a ton of like every year I don't build like whatever like the height plug is, or stuff's always changing. I just keep modifying whatever I use. If one season I find fishing deeper water that following year that I build, I'll alter like that same body, you know what I mean, to fit like that situation. But I won't start building like a ton of different stuff. But I think it's better. I think it's better than bringing, I hear guys sometimes at night, it's like Velcro all night, like they're just cycling through plugs, and I get that, but I rather move. Like, I don't care how good a plug is. Sometimes like a plug can only be so good if there's, it's only good if fish are there, you know. So if they're not there, it doesn't matter what you're clicking on. They're not going to swim 4 miles over to you, you know. So I'll usually move along if I'm not doing good with whatever's in my bag.
How big is in your opinion, the confidence in your plug that you use?
I think that's the largest. I think that's more important than. I've had like waterlogged plugs, like a couple waterlogged terrible plugs, and they just are horrible, but they actually like fished well. Because they fished well, I had confidence in them, knowing how waterlogged bad they were, or a lip that's like falling out, and I'll continue to do well on it. And you look at it in the water, it's done, you know. And I'll continue to catch on it just because I have confidence in it, because it worked that one night before I realized how crappy it was. And that just means it's strictly confidence, you know. It's like going to a spot that you bud like. I don't know, it's horrible, and like right away you don't care how many fish are there, or like if you just feel like it's a crappy spot, or you know, it just sucks for you. I think it's the same way with plugs. If you're feeling good about something, it could work even if it's waterlogged, broken, tied on backwards sometimes, you know, if you're feeling it.
Are you still doing a lot of Canal?
Like obviously like the last 6-7 years kind of gets crazy and crazier there. So I don't go. I used to go for like mornings. I'm only 25 minutes from there, so it's hard not to go. But I spent the better part of a decade or longer than that. I spent, you know, years like jigging just at night when I wasn't surf fishing. So I'll still go and jig sometimes, or I eel the canal a lot. But that's about it. I'll do that once in a while, and more just to go. But I used to do that religiously almost every night. I wasn't in the surf, I would go jig. Again, I live in an area it's like perfect. Like I can be in the surf in 25 minutes, and the canal's only 25 minutes from here. So I used to jig extensively, but then it, you know, turned it a little bit into a zoo. It was then too, you know, a lot of guys, but it is different between a lot of guys then and a lot of guys now.
I'm assuming that fishing live eels in a canal has to do around the slack tide.
No, you want it full. I like full going tide.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want conventional too. Like I use a conventional setup. I can do it well with a spinning setup.
I'm not a live eel guy. I'm not a live eel guy. Okay, go ahead. I want to hear
Baraka does it real well too.
That's all he does well.
Yeah. But conventional.
I'm just joking. Well. I love him. Yeah. He's great. I miss him. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just spoke to him earlier. I still mess with him with plugs because I got him into plug fishing back when we started fishing together. And he just ties them on. You just burn them in. He'd be like, "Yeah, this doesn't work." I'm like,
this should work. Give me the eel. Yeah, I know Mike well. He's good with eels. Yeah.
He got way more into plugs, and I think like this winter he got like a couple metal lips. From a guy, Jamie Schaefer, Gremlin Lures. And it was so weird. It was so weird just seeing how excited he was about plugs. I'm like, whoa, you know, it's like different. And he used to have that saying like, oh, like if they don't eat eels, like F them, you know? And like, that was his motto. Now after so many nights that, you know, they don't want eels, but they crush plugs. He's came around.
But how does it work with the, I mean, if the current, obviously it's very fast in Canal to begin with, wouldn't you, and here I'm talking like a perfect novice, wouldn't it be if you casted an eel, wouldn't it be just like, wouldn't it swing right into shore?
No, especially not.
Wait a minute. So you're finding a special areas where there's a special water movement.
There's water that shoots out for sure. But you're only casting, a lot of those fish will pull, like when there is an eel bite, they'll pull to like the riprap, and they're usually always big. But a conventional reel is a little bit better because when you cast, you want a bigger eel and a rubber core. And when you cast out, your line comes off the conventional, like verse, like coming off the spool, like oscillating. So it'll run almost parallel wherever your cast line's down the riprap, and they'll just pick it up and run with it. And then you just switch over on your level line, and then just strike and then kind of set up. And same thing with spinning. You just got to feed it the line. You don't want it to like come off the spool, like oscillate, because it's going to slowly pivot the eel into the riprap. But you do that, and there's so many nights where it's if you find one fish, usually it's bass fire, you know, it's endless. But like those fish won't be on the bottom where jig guys can get them. And then some of my best nights have ran right into early morning, 5 a.m. and the whole morning crowd comes. You can't do it with anyone around because you want like long drifts.
Yeah, you need a lot of room. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, nights where like you're just making it half a pole down, and it's just big fish after big fish. And then the morning crew would come in, and there's just the deadest place ever. You know, they would never know that there was a lot of fish. But on the flip side, you have a lot of nights where, it's terrible. You know, you don't get picked up once, and then the sun comes up. The fish choose whether they want to eat at night or during the day, and they like stick to their guns. You know, like they'll even pick up the eel, run with it a little bit, and like spit it. But and then the morning will come, and it'll be, you know, a bonanza. But it happens sometimes the other way around. It's like the hardworking guys, you know, like you'll crush on eels, and then you can't believe how many fish are there. And then the morning comes, and all these people come, and you stick around to see if it's any good, and it's just terrible, you know.
Because you have to stick around.
You just to see, you know. At that point, I'm only watching, like just hanging out. I'm like half dead, but it's just to see if the fish that like you crushed all night are actually going to like chew top water or, you know, start crashing on bait. And usually they don't. But on the flip side, when they're good in the morning, usually you won't get them at night on eels.
Well, that kind of makes sense. I mean, you're not going to expect the fish to feed like 12 hours a time. You know what I'm saying? They usually don't.
Yeah, no, not at all. It's like I think when Nick was on recently, I remember him saying like, you know, bass, like once it eats 3 pogies, it's kind of full. I never thought of that way, but it makes sense. You know, like how many bunker can a bass eat before, you know what I mean? That's good, pretty good nutrition for, you know.
Listen, I can eat a bag of Doritos, but the other day I had a pastrami's hero, and I was done. Dude, I was done for days. That shit just killed me.
When did you get in? What got you into surf fishing?
I always fished. Like my old man worked in like a boatyard when I was a kid, and he worked at a boatyard. He was just like he did everything: bottom paint, pressure wash, and take care of docks. And so I used to every summer I'd have to go to work with him every day. So there's nothing to do but fish. And then I got like hand-me-down boats, like little tin boats and stuff, and it was a ton of fish then. And so I used to just fish every day. I had no choice. I didn't go to summer camp. And then I got a little bit older, and then I got out of it, got into skateboarding, and then in my like late teens or around 15, I got back into fishing. And then it was surf casting was, you know, I didn't have a boat then. I did when I was a kid. And surf casting, I just super appealing, you know. And you do it from show, and then I just happen to like live where, you know, right next to all. If you put in time, serious amount of great surf fishing. So then I started then, and that was before. I mean, back then, if you saw any surf guys out at night, they're not the friendliest type, you know. Like be like, finally, I'm gonna walk. Be like, I want to say hi, and just be like, you know. So now everyone wants to like mingle now, but I'm like, if you started fishing back then, like no one was nice, you know. Like even if you were like a young kid, they didn't have 2 seconds for you. So I still appreciate kind of like that. You know, stealthy, like rude, like way. Like I don't mind that either when guys do that.
It's interesting with skateboarding too, because you're constantly looking for spots when you're skateboarding. Like you're out there, like a lot of times at night too. You're out, you know, looking for a curb or a parking garage or something like that. It's got like similar mindset. I find.
I feel like that. I feel like a lot of skateboarders end up surf casting, which is strange, right?
Yeah,
you know, there's
interesting.
A few surfcasters that used to skate. You know, it never goes away though. Like even when you're older, and I haven't skated. I have a ton of boards like right across the room. I haven't skated in years, but like you still see like a weird curb or a rail. You know, like you just, you know, you're always like on the lookout for spots.
And it's kind of like a solo endeavor too, because you know it's like you're doing it. It's just you versus you. You know what I mean? And that's why I feel surf casting's like the same thing. Like
much alike.
Like, how are you going to push yourself to you know, to get further with it? You know what I mean? I see a lot of parallels between it, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm out of this conversation, but you both are graphic artists, right?
Yeah.
See, they share something else.
I started with skateboards, actually. I was like, I started, what did I have? I had like PageMaker, like 6.0 back years ago. And I wanted to make like skateboard graphics. And then that's originally what got me into it. And then I started like interning at a place and doing like real estate magazines or like layouts for homes for sale. But I went there to like just learn. They like were super cool. And I work for them to this day. But I just went there. But I started with skateboard graphics. I wanted to make like, they're terrible, but I probably still have some on here. 15 years later, still doing design.
How's your fishing changed over the years?
I'm not sure. I'm still wicked stubborn. I used to fish like back-to-back tides and never go home. And now I throw in the towel a little bit more. But also, like, when you do it for so long, I always have something like a backup plan, or fishing's definitely got harder. I was lucky I started fishing when it was so good, because you can learn. I think you learn easier when there's a lot more fish. You know, if you go out and you can do like everything right and not catch now. You know, back then, if you did everything right, you know, you'd at least get a few fish, even if it was a slow night. So I think it was easier to learn like back then because there's so many fish. So then you can kind of figure things out. You know, now you could work a needlefish perfectly and not do well for a week. So then you think you're doing it wrong where really you are. There's just, you know, where fish are. You know, back then there's more fish to kind of like learn by. And then now it makes it much easier because I can kind of just like process of elimination, right? You know, like I can like narrow down where I want to fish and what I want to use. And I still almost have confidence in everything I throw and then almost every spot I go to or else I wouldn't go, you know, whereas if you start fishing now, I think it's so much harder to, you know, gain confidence because there's just fewer fish. But I used to fish a ton of tides, like one after another. I'd get out at 9 p.m. and I would stay to like sun up and then I would do it exact again and again and again. And I had no reason to go home, you know. It's like I had no
you
kids
also
at the
didn't
time.
have a 4-month-old and a 2-year-old at home.
So now I fish a lot, but I also like I know when to throw in the towel now. So if it's crappy,
well, I mean,
like I just
doesn't
go
it
home.
help? Doesn't it help that the spots that you fish, you're more confident in a particular tide?
I also put in so many years fishing so many different spots and so many different tides that I don't have like a big network like some guys do, but I can almost guarantee one of them are going to work. And then if they don't, I actually don't mind. Like
Wait a minute, you don't call the Jersey guys to know where to fish?
No. Sometimes,
well, come on now.
Sometimes when like I'm doing terrible and everyone else is doing well, I'll be like, man, I wish I networked like those guys. But I never want to do it because every time someone gives me like throws me a bone, now I owe them, and I don't want to owe them because when I find good fish, I just like I don't want to like feel like now I have to tell this guy or like I don't want to do it with like 8 people. I fish with 1 or 2 other guys and that's it. So sometimes like I'm like, man, I wish a little network goes like a long way. I think that's what a lot of guys online do. I'm just
you know what I want to give my due to Jersey guys because we all make fun of Jersey guys, but
they take it on the chin.
Not only that, let me tell you something. When Jersey was hot, they were in Jersey. When Montauk was hot, they were all in the Montauk parking lot. When the Cape, you don't see any other. You don't see the New York plates in Jersey. You don't see Massachusetts and Montauk. They're the only one that travel around and fish together. So I got to give them props. Those guys fish their asses off.
Yeah, they'll go hard.
We're just not used to it because they usually travel in big packs. Yeah. And we are usually like a solitary dudes with a partner or something like that. And you run into 5-6 guys and it's unusual. And I get that because you're local and have never seen anything like it. But they pay their dues.
Yeah.
They do.
They fish with they're used to fishing with more guys anyway. But one thing I'll always give them props for is everyone blames everything on Jersey guys and they get most heat fun. And they're completely okay with it, they just play along with it. But I imagine if they were doing good, they would invite you. Whereas as soon as you see 2 Jersey plates here, it's everything that goes wrong in Massachusetts, everyone's like, oh, it's a Jersey guy,
They're hard working guys. Yeah. They really are.
They get a lot of heat, but they're actually. I never met a Jersey guy.
And as you and I discussed before, their season really sucks because they have this great fishery for a few months early, and then everything dies until Christmas, more or less. It used to be Thanksgiving. Now they get 2 weeks, so they're kind of forced to travel. To be honest with you, they have no choices. But then again, don't you go to Cuttyhunk? What do you do? Overnight trip?
I usually stay there with a friend. For a decade, I would do commando trips. I live. If I went down the street, I'm at the ferry. So my office is near the big ferry in John Paul's boat. But I also live 3 minutes from there. So I live in a trifecta, Canal, surf fishing, Rhode Island and Cuttyhunk. So it's a 50-minute boat ride, but it's only a couple minutes from the house. So I just park at my work and go. But I used to for more than 10 years. I think since 2007, I would just go over on the ferry and I'd get my wetsuit on the airstrip and I'd just fish all night. And last couple of years, I've been just staying with a bud. So now I go for multiple days. It's a little bit better on the body too. When I came back, I used to be crushed. I used to fish. I'd get off the ferry at 7 p.m., fish from 8 p.m. all the way to the club opened for breakfast, and then I would take the 11 a.m. ferry off. But I felt like I could peel my skin off, and I would do that every weekend, and just like a corpse, and not getting home till noon. I still never showered, just switch back into my normal clothes, and then I'd have to find a shady place to sleep for a couple hours, and take the ferry home, and then I would sleep till 8 p.m. And obviously I can't do that now. And now when I go, I stay with a bud, and we usually fish. We'll fish like a whole tide. If it's good, we'll fish later. But then I actually get some sleep before I come back. If it's good, I stay. I'll do that. It depends. I don't like you.
Yeah, go ahead. No, nothing. Go ahead.
I also, you guys fish during the day. I hardly fish during the day.
Well, we're in Cuttyhunk. I got to tell you, it gets kind of a little boring during the daytime. We just go out exploring because what are you going to do? Just sit in a room and drink all day? I mean,
yeah.
The place is beautiful and you can never run. I mean, we ran into some big fish, although we only took one rod and there was 3 of us.
Really?
We went down to 5 of us.
To 5, Ray, Robbie, you and I, 4, right?
Four guys, 1 rod.
Was it Lenny? No, there wasn't Lenny in there.
No. One pair of pliers.
Yeah.
2 plugs.
We walked into churches. One guy says, I'm going to take a rod. I'm like, I'm not taking a rod. Forget about it. I don't know whose rod was it. And we walked into churches, and I swear to you, it looked like somebody threw a refrigerator into the water about 100 yards out. It's like,
really?
Oof, the whole water explodes. And I'm like, what is that, whale or something?
I thought it was somebody swimming.
Yeah, and then one of the guys made a cast, and the first bass was, I don't know, high 20s, and every fish was 20 pounds and up. But we only had 1 rod. So now we had to take turns and watch the other guy land it. It was kind of hilarious. But
I would probably do the same.
Happened.
Just because I hate fishing during the day so much. I'd probably be like, no.
I've never
really.
We've never set out to just fish in the daytime there. It's just like you go for a walk and you just take a rod with you, or you're at the cottage and you see a fish break. Yeah. And you just run down, make a couple casts, or run back. You know what I mean?
Well, it's too exhausting if you're gonna fish all night, which is what you like. You think about this all year, especially for us to travel, and you get there and you waste yourself in the daytime running around rocks. The nighttime is just you're gonna be dead.
I have it a little easier because I go so often that if I was doing what you guys do, is your annual trip once a year, I'd probably fish all day as well. But sometimes you luck out that way because same as we talked about the canal, if those fish would chew during the day and they're chew really well, they probably won't chew at night. You probably have to find different fish that at night. So whatever blitz you ran into or whatever fish you were catching during the day, probably if they chewed and they nice and fat and full, they probably won't eat at night. So while I might pass on daytime fishing, I might not have a night bite because of it.
What passes on for a great night of Cuttyhunk?
Man, I have more some of my best nights are not the biggest fish, or it's just funny stories, and we're always having a hoot over there. Plus, more people go, so who I fish with, we just spend more time avoiding guys, rather than get mad at someone's where we want to be fishing or try to fish there. When you go a lot, you put in a lot more time, so you have I have a better understanding of what's going on. So whoever goes over, they're generally staying at the club. So if they see guys who, other lights, they're going to assume that those guys are where the fish. So we play a bunch of light games, fake camera flashes, get them to move and then go up the bluff around. I had nights cracking up there. I probably didn't catch a 30-inch fish, and that was a funner night than sitting there smoking 30-pound bass all night. Just to get guys move with camera flashes and lights and
that's my favorite.
You're acting like a bunch of schoolgirls, we're smacking the water, and then sure enough, they see us leave, and they you can't see them run fast enough, and then where they were, we go just kind of give them make head games or whatever, But when we seriously want to fish, we'll avoid them. And, it's people go whether you want people to go or not, they go. It's a great place. So instead of get mad over it, we'll either just fish somewhere else or. So some of my best nights aren't. I've had nights there. It's nothing but large fish, but that doesn't mean those are my best nights there. My best nights are usually goofing off, and we do a lot of that.
I'm a big fan of the fake camera flash.
It works every time.
Oh my God, that's the best.
What's crazy is I do it and I'm sucker, but if a guy lights off a camera flash, I start getting curious. I can't stop looking at him. I'm waiting for it again so I can see what illuminates in the camera flash. So although I do it as a prank, if someone else did it to me as a prank, I'd fall for it too. So
I've done it once, and I kind of felt bad the next day. I was in Caswell's and I was bored out of my mind, and I just kept flashing that thing all night long, and you see everybody's kind of moving slowly towards you. But I mean, wouldn't you think if the guy that's flashing walks away, there's something wrong? Like, you know,
that's the biggest mind game.
He's got a 60-pounder. He's trying to go get.
Okay.
Like if I go through my SD cards, I'll have like fish or like a sunset on my SD cards. It'd be like 40 pictures, and then it'd be like 8 photos of just my boots. So I just like keep clicking them on my boots. So it's just my boots on a rock, and I'm like, what are these? And I'm like, oh, those are fake photos I took.
I've done the fake photo with the beach walk back. Like I have all pictures of our friend Lenny just like pretending to walk back, like walking the fish backwards.
Oh, yeah.
Because then they see the silhouette of you running back and forth. Oh my God. That's one of my favorite moves of all time.
It's fun every time too.
It is. And I think even leaving, like I remember fishing a spot here on Long Island, and there were a few people there, and I got a fish immediately. Like the first cast I was there, and they saw me catch the fish, and I was like, what am I going to do? And I left. Like I got in my truck and drove a mile down the beach. I just did it like suddenly, like, and it made them think like, why would this guy just leave? Yeah. So I hid in the truck, and they went to they left too. And then I double back and got my spot.
Oh yeah, that will work too. It's a lot of times up here, like people only like fish if they see you fishing. You know, like I think guys like they'll do their rounds, and if they see like people fishing there, or if they see people fishing, they think that there's fish there. You know, so a lot of times I could just play like the hokey doke like leave game, or you know, I have fun doing that. It's like.
It's the best. It's all part of it.
But it's the best. Yeah.
No, it's part of it. It's gamesmanship, man.
Well, I mean, yeah, it is. But that goes a little bit into the competitive thing. Like, are you a competitive guy?
Mainly with whoever I fish with. Like, there's like anyone like if your fishing partner catches a huge fish, like you're stoked for him. But like, there's no part about it. Like, no doubt about it. Like. Your bud's on a big fish. You're like, when he loses it, you're like, whew, like now I don't have to catch one bigger, you know? So there's always like some competitiveness, you know, like, oh, thank God he dropped that fish, you know? But like, we horse around a lot. Like one of my favorite things, like I always do, like if I cast lefty, so I can always share a rock. If I have a good rock, if someone can always stand that with me. So like, I do it to Mike all the time. I'll do like the rod butt trick, like, you know, like if he's fishing an eel or whatever, I'll casually like lean back, and with my hand I'll hit the bottom of his rod, like his butt up, and it works.
So
like
mean.
I wish you can get like a you know, a video reaction of all the times I've ever done it, but I pretty much do it to everyone. But he's like notorious. Like if you swim out to a rock and he meets you out there, he's notorious for like swimming out in the dark and like grabbing your leg, and you have no idea he's coming, you know, or yell shark or something. So we pretty much just horse around a lot.
Well, what did you do last year? Hold on. Didn't you guys cast off a rod last year? Was it 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
In Cuttyhunk, right?
Chris, I was just chilling and I had the rod, you know.
Another graphic artist.
Yeah, well, I was just chilling. I had the rod like on your shoulder, like, you know, and just barely like your relaxing mode.
Yeah.
And he fired up to take a cast, and his plug wrapped around my rod tip.
Oh, no. Yeah.
And I'm sitting there holding the rod, and then the next minute, it just got slingshotted out of my hands.
And just the top half of the whole thing?
The whole thing.
Oh,
and I watched it sail off into the night. And I just was like, what the fuck just happened?
Did you get it back?
He was like,
well, the story is I was on a rock. We were Southwest Point, so they swam out to those rocks and they got on a rock together. So when Chris casted his rock off, it was a new moon. Dude, you couldn't see a damn thing. So we tried to, I was on a rock next to them, so I swam over and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And nothing, we couldn't find it. And then they decided, we were like just going to come in the morning and try to swim around the rock. Because, you know, it's probably about 7-8 feet of water around that rock on a high tide. You can almost walk to it.
I think I know the rock you're talking about.
Right, well, it's got a hole in it. You know what I'm saying? It's got a hole from the old bass stand, right?
Yeah.
So it was a new moon, and they went back, and they sat on that big log on right behind it. There's a gigantic log, and they were sitting there, and I think Christian was with them. And I got up on the rock that they were fishing. I was fishing a little bit, so I got out and I was just about to swim back, and I'm starting touching with my feet. I'm like swimming around, and I'm putting my hand on, and I touch the rod tip of the rod.
Way.
Yeah, and I grab it right, and now it's wrapped up in a bubbleweed, right? So I'm like, Yankee. Finally, I get it up, but I don't say nothing. It's pinch dog. Those three are sitting there. They're totally bummed out. I mean, we're talking about like death, just sitting on a log. No one's talking to each other. Like, he's not pissed at him, but he really is pissed at him.
No, I was surprisingly calm. Like, I was like, my rod, my baby, disappeared.
Yeah,
like it was gone, and I was kind of like, this is a funny story. Like,
$1,000 van stolen and a $500 rod, and
I was like
devastated.
And I felt bad that he felt bad. Yeah, but he's one of my good buddies.
Yes,
so
he felt awful.
I said, listen, you have a job, right? And he goes, yeah. Okay, and I go, so you buy me another one? It's whatever. But he found it. And he snuck it, and he didn't let us know that he had it.
So I walked in, and I'm getting pounded on the way in. I says, watch me break his rod on the way in now. So I walk up to them, and it's like I said, it's a pinch dark night, right? So I now have both rods on my shoulder, but you can't tell that because I put them together, And I'm like, yo, guys, how you doing? And they're like, I got to go tomorrow. This sucks. So I go, here you go. Oh, my God. It was hilarious.
What are the odds? That's truly like needle in a haystack.
Yeah, Chris is like, I owe you a tattoo. He's like, tattoo artist. He's like, I owe you a tattoo.
Oh, yeah, now I know who he is. Yeah,
Chris Bernard.
What are the odds you found that? That is wild.
Yeah, I got lucky. Literally. I mean, it's just...
And I had already wrote it off as gone. Like,
yeah, he did.
Like, that's it,
That's one of those places, like, if your rod butt gets, like, or your reel gets stuck in the bubbleweed, it's like you can't pull it out. It is the bubbleweed there is, like, on steroids.
How many times did you break the line trying to get you get the rod out and you got no line and you're like, what had just happened? But it's that bad.
Swallows everything up.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever stepped on a rock that when you stepped on it wasn't a rock? It was a bubbleweed that looked like a rock?
Oh, yeah. Or like it'll be 4 feet high. So you're like, wow, there must be a rock in that bubbleweed.
Yeah.
And then
you just step on it and you go down 10 feet. You're like, what the?
It's like when you step off. It's when you like step off, like you think there's another step. And like you go for another step and there's not, like you just fall right into it.
And every time I do that, I lose my hat. I go down and the hat just keeps floating up, and I hear that.
I've gotten mangled there so many times by swell or like destroyed, like just ripped open my hands, like just barnacle covered. There's always, and then you go to get up in the bubbleweed there. It's insane. It wraps around your ankle and that's it.
Well, here's a question. I got a question for both of you though. Like, the feeling that you get when you go to a place like Cuttyhunk, do you still think that there are other experiences out there that we don't know about yet? Like, could we find another place? You know what I'm saying? Like, how many places are left where you could still feel like you're going on an adventure? You know what I'm saying?
There's a ton of them. That's the only time I get frustrated with guys around here. Is like everyone seems to like migrate to the same places, but even with the smallest effort, I can find like super cool spots that are, awesome with or without fish, much like there, So there's still so much like real estate that's cool.
I found like 2 or 3 in the last year or so that give me like that same feeling, like I'm going on like a secret mission or like an adventure. You know what I mean? Like, that's what drives me.
Yeah.
I think if Steve Forbes ever answers my email and give me access to his private island, which is right next to Cuttyhunk, I think I could find a few spots.
You just go. You just go. No one has to know what you. No one has to know what you do.
I'm waiting
anything
for
below
Jeff.
the high water mark too is that's completely on limits. You're fine.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, you got a bunch of islands there that nobody fishes.
Yeah, no, some people fish them.
Well, I'm not suggesting that people don't.
Yeah,
I know they do, but you know what I'm saying.
But they shouldn't.
For the public, is not open. So they got to be cool spots.
What's cool is you can still up here. You can still find places that are like untapped. Like I fish it's probably my 3rd or 4th time fishing Montauk, and it just seems like every rock. I mean, I've been so deep on the south side. And you like every rock, there's still like corker marks all over it. Like, so there's nothing personal there. Like when I just like swim out to like rocks I fish, we do like landscaping, you get a clean bubbleweed off them. But any mark on that rock is generally like my grip studs, Whereas Montauk, you can be way deep on the south side and you think you found like a nice rock and you go to it and it's like, that thing, there's like 18 names on that thing, like.
I've scaled down everything. I fished primarily with a 2-2 bag That's it. And like a small pouch, like on the belt.
That's what I do. I do a rigged eel pouch, then two tubes, and I have a single tube. So I can go a 2 tube if I have like an eel jug, or a 3 tube with just single on, or I can go 4 tubes, if I'm not fishing eels. But I'm not sure about you guys. I don't fish with anything over my shoulder except my eel jug. Like guys that carry a big big plug bag over their shoulder. I hate casting like that. When you like reach down and grab.
Wait. Did I just hear the magic word, the eel jug?
The big mayonnaise.
I don't use mayo. I use Caesar dressing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. How do you swim with that damn thing?
Well, it's like this big. It's super small.
That's a phenomenon. That's a north of Connecticut phenomenon.
I never got the eel bag thing. Like you just sitting there with a big bag dangling. Right. I even stopped using a boga grip. I have like the little fish grips. But when you're fishing riggies and plugs depends. Like I generally don't even use carrying around a big boga. I couldn't imagine an eel bag. The jug is so much lighter.
So let's clarify. So north of.
I'm going to say Mystic.
Yeah, north of Stamford, Connecticut.
Yeah, eel jug only.
If you're going to fish eels, you use a giant mayonnaise jar with
Caesar dressing.
Yeah, like a giant salad dressing jar, and in like a restaurant grade salad dressing jar with some sort of connected lid that attaches to your belt. And maybe it has a rag attached to the top, like a little scuff pad.
I have a couple hanging right over here. Yeah.
And then
you got to go.
That's what your eels go into. South of Stamford, Connecticut, you use like a mesh laundry bag to keep.
That's what you guys use, right?
Yeah.
You guys find that easier than a jug?
I geographically, I can't use the jug.
Oh, yeah, I'm not legally allowed by law.
I'll give you permission. All right, like a permission slip.
I don't know what would happen if somebody saw me with that thing. I'm sorry. I don't know.
It's super light. It's super light, and the eels. I think the eels like it better. Plus, the bag is just terrible.
Now, is there holes in it?
Yeah.
Does it fill with water and then drain?
Yeah, but slowly. But like when you're swimming, it'll generally float, even if there's water in it. It's just a plastic. There's going to be some air in it, so it floats. But I've had a couple nights where, like, I have a live well here, so it always has eels in it. But I remember a couple, like, knockout nights. Went out the next night, and I picked, like, when it's good, when it's bad, I'll only carry a couple eels. Like, if I'm not sure what I'm fishing, but if they want eels, I'll go with a ton of, like, nice eels. I think I had more than a dozen, like, perfect, like, 14-inch, like, short, fat eels. Because the, like, night before that was good. And just, like, get hit by a swell or, like, you open the lid of the eel jug, and it's always on a piece of like weed whacker material, so it can drop like 8 inches, but you can have 2 hands to hook the eel without the lid just falling in the water. But just like an absolute swell, just knock you off, and then like when you get knocked off, all you're thinking about is the eel jug because it's open, and I surface and there'd just be no eels in it. Like I didn't even make a cast for the night, so there is some downside, like just losing every perfect eel that you brought out. Now the fish are there. And they want eels because the night before, and now your eels are just swimming around.
Speaking of eels, I'm not a live eel guy, but when I was talking to Campo the other day, he said that they were out on a cape, and the habit was, because your truck was right there, to just put an eel on your and just walk to the water and cast. And he was the first guy, in his opinion, not that he wanted to be the first, but he just said what he was doing. He was one of the only guys that used an eel bag to hold eels because he calculated that, for every time he has to walk back to the truck, get another eel and walk back, he'd lost like 3 minutes. And if you did this 20 times a night, he just fished, 68 minutes more than you did. And to him, that was the more important thing. And it's fascinating how his mind works. But I mean, when you think about it, if you're fishing 3 hours or 4 hours, half an hour is a big deal if you're not fishing. Deal.
So he was using a jug or a mesh bag?
A mesh bag.
He
was using a mesh
makes
bag.
Total sense.
But no one in a Cape never did because they could always walk to the truck, just get another eel.
Yeah. That makes total sense. That's how I feel about riggies compared to live eels. You get a 20-pound bass, you can unhook it on the riggie in 2 seconds. If you have a live eel, you got to hope that your eel slid perfectly up your lead, or you can still salvage the eel, that it's not like hooked like in the roof of the mouth. And then you can quickly switch, like Now you got to like deal with like wrestle like a new fresh eel out of your jug, get it on, and get it back to fish. Whereas a riggy is just you just want it like one after another. You can just cycle through your fish till you get a big one or a bigger one. You probably catch like for every 3 fish you can catch on live eels, you probably get 6. You can go through like 6 or 7 fish on a rigged eel. So just like that walking thing, I think you save time with riggies. Again,
I think I one night with Ray, I think I caught like 6 or 7 fish. They were all 30-pound fish, and the eel was literally in 2 pieces, held on with 2 rigged eel hooks. The middle was gone, and it was still catching fish.
Yeah,
I mean that's how crazy it was. But ever fish live eels dead, meaning dead eels with just a single hook?
No, I've tried like the eel bob. Like I know quite a few guys that like the eel bobs, but I've never done well on them.
Neither have I.
I've tried like a half-ounce jig head, and I have 2 buds who are doing it like last couple seasons, and they're catching large fish. But I try to make a couple, and then I'd rather go to the riggy. I feel like I know what it's doing on like the head, and I don't know. I never done as well. I think they're like coring out some of it and tying it to a nice like solid. Like a solid jig head with a solid hook.
Yeah, I mean, but when if this happens to everyone, sometimes you just have an accident where all your eels are dead in your bucket.
Yeah,
you're literally fishing dead eel. I just don't lose all the confidence. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just drained out of me.
I also don't like fresh dead eels for riggies. I like them at least frozen ones before I make them. When you make a lot of them, you start to get more and more particular.
Yeah. I agree with you with that. I think frozen are better, and you can stripe the slime a lot easier, and they seem a lot hardier when you're rigging them. The live ones are just too fleshy. They're too soft.
And there's that old rule, like forgot they said it like a long time ago. If you want to kill like a bunch of eels, I'll buy eels just to make riggies. I'll fish like if my eels die in my eel jug from live eels, but I fish riggies more. But if they do die, I'll save them. If they're perfect size for riggies, I'll save them. But I think like a long time ago, someone said you could throw like a cigarette butt in a bucket of like live eels, and the sulfur will kill them in minutes. And it does. And I've done that. Like, I bought like live eels just to make riggies. So I wanted to kill them fast. They don't die when you want them to die. If you want them to live, they all die. But so I remember like lighting a cigarette and throwing it in there, and you do watch them kind of like inflate, and it's terrible looking. But I never catch fish on those. I don't know if they smell like cigarettes. I don't they get bloated and gross, and I never done as well.
I think that's how same shit happens to humans. No, I mean, don't you bloat when you at first before the rigor sets in? You bloat, and then later you get all like stiff. So I think the same thing happens to eels. When you freeze them, you get the rigors that sit in.
Yeah, I don't know if the sulfur also deters like the fish. But anytime I kill like a bunch of eels, I can make riggies out of those. I don't know if it's like what happens to them, or they just, they breed so much of that, they take in so much of that sulfur that kills them, and the fish can smell it. Like I never do as well on those riggies.
Tom, I think we gotta invite Frank to Cuttyhunk next time, and we need like a master class. What do you say?
I'm into it, 100%.
All right, Frank, you're in. All right, listen, thank you so much for joining us.
It was a good time.
It was a pleasure. Thanks. It was really good, and I hope we'll see a Cuttyhunk or somewhere around there.
Hey, anytime. Thanks for having me.